Welcome to the Exploring Awareness podcast. Join Dr. Frank Anderson and Lisa Berry in exploring new ways to live in this chaotic world and find peace and joy in the most unlikely places.
Welcome to the Exploring Awareness podcast, the conversation about finding peace and love and joy in the most unlikely places. I'm Lisa, and Frank is here. Hey, Frank, what's new in your world?
Well, Lisa, we are discovering all kinds of new tools and ways to find peace and joy in the most unlikely places. And there are a couple of cool new things I've found. This year, I told you that Burning Man was virtual this year. And they did it through the Oculus Quest, so you could do this virtual Burning Man experience. Well, it turns out they have a meditation group, a virtual meditation group. It's called Evolve VR.
Oh, nice.
I really enjoyed sitting with them. And then also, because of the COVID epidemic, we had a meditation group here in Ann Arbor. It used to be called Ann Arbor Open Meditation, and we had some other towns around that we all went by the same format. Well, we merged, and now we're called Open Mindfulness Meditation. And I was just thinking that our listeners could join us anytime they want. And I usually lead the meditation on the second Thursday of each month from 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And I know, Lisa, that's where you and I met.
Right.
So if, people were interested, they could go to openmindfulnessmeditation.org and get on our mailing list, and you'll get the Zoom link. And you could join us for meditation some Thursday night.
I know we used to go in person before the pandemic, and, I'm big on energy and being together with a group meditating at the same time. It's kind of like how I feel about prayer. It's that energy of everybody shooting for the same space to be in the same peaceful place. And I miss that. But now you're doing it on Zoom and we can still participate.
Right. I would love to meet listeners there. So you'd be welcome to join us anytime.
All right. Well, we could put the link and mention it when we post this podcast as well.
Oh, that's a good idea. And you could find me in the Evolve VR as well in some virtual reality. It's so cool because they have these different spaces that you meditate in. And the one on Tuesday night is like in space, and you watch the Earth turn in 3D, and really great meditation teachers. And it's very appropriate for beginners and for intermediate or whoever just wants to meditate with a group. But you meditate with your avatar. So, but you can talk to people afterwards too. Yeah, it's just in this spirit of let us not be victimized or caged in by the current pandemic situation that we're living in. We've got a lot of division in the country. And, I'm noticing some lack of kindness in the conversation.
You what? No, you are?
A lack of kindness. And I thought, at least for our listeners, we can talk about kindness and where that comes from and what that looks like, and how in the world could you be kind to someone who you disagree with even, So exploring kindness in the context of exploring awareness, because a lot of times we hear these rules, be kind, and we'd all like to be kind, but we also find it difficult sometimes to be kind. And sometimes we end up reacting as opposed to responding. And so I thought we could explore kindness as a response to whatever happens.
Kindness as a response to whatever happens. Love it, love it, love it, love it. Thank you for that. First, I think people might interpret kindness as a weakness. Have you ever heard that?
Yeah, I think so. It's like the nice guy finishing last.
Yeah. So what can we do to make kindness cool You
Well,
know,
why do
what
you
can
think
we?
that's the case? Why do you think that the nice guy finishes last?
I don't think that. I like nice guys.
So why do you think it happens? What does it come? Where does that come from?
I don't know, but it's like, does it matter?
Well, I do think it matters because I think that the context, of life is important. And so what happens if you're like in a super competitive environment where the loudest person wins? And, sometimes I feel like we're in that environment right now. Who can squawk the loudest? And sometimes that does make the nice guy at least seem like they finish last because the squawkers and the loudest and most aggressive people get what they want.
I'm at the point in my life that I have found the only way I can handle situations like that is to remove myself from the situation. And I always say, I'm not a competitive person. Unless I'm running a marathon or I'm in the Olympics, I don't feel like I'm competing with somebody else. And I also think that, and I've actually done public speaking about this, about women supporting other women. I think there's like a natural inclination that women compete against each other. I don't know. Maybe this is my Pollyanna approach, but I think if we just were kind and supported each other, the world would be a much better place. So I don't know. The nice guy finishes last. And what I meant by does it matter? It's like, unless you're running a race or you're in the Olympics or running for president, maybe, I don't know. When does you put the value on whether that matters or not?
Well, and you put the matter on what does it mean to finish last or not? Because finishing last for one person may not be the same as finishing last for another. I mean, I am a nice guy as well, but I'm not a pushover. It's really knowing your core, knowing your internal self, knowing what your principles are, and forging ahead with that no matter what. There's a nice story that I was told by someone, well, a nice saying. It's like the people that are walking this path toward, connecting to their core and authenticity are walking together on a path. And we're working with each other and we're not on the sidelines, throwing stones at the people on the path. That does kind of get to this sense of kindness as part of a core element that really pushes us forward on the path no matter who's throwing stones at us, no matter what other people might be saying, because our path is toward something that's true and authentic. Whereas if you don't get the deal because you're a nice guy, that doesn't really mean much in the big picture of things.
Are you saying we need to be authentic in our kindness?
Yeah, that's right. That's. I think that being authentic in the kindness is very, very strong, and actually will have an impact on people.
So where does it come from?
Where does kindness come from? That's a great question. Where do you think it comes from?
I don't know. Are you raised? Isn't it the golden rule to do unto others as you would have others do unto you? To me, that means kindness. I think it's how you're raised. If it's emphasized when you're growing up that kindness matters. You hear that phrase a lot. I love that phrase. Kindness matters. So it's what you put value on. And I don't think some people think about kindness necessarily.
It's like, be nice to your sister or else you're going to get in trouble.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And so, you be nice to people and is it well, examine for yourself, you and myself and listeners, is this kindness, is the niceness, is it really authentic or is it fake? Are you really being kind to someone because you feel it, or are you being kind because you have to be?
I like the feeling of being kind.
Yeah.
I think I have been through so much in my life, and I know how difficult and challenging life can be. So if I can offer a bit of kindness to somebody, if I can cheer them up, if I can say something thoughtful, I like how it makes me feel, and I like how I hope it makes them feel. And then I'm thinking that's a positive win-win situation.
Right. Right. And there's lots of kind things that we can do that kind of come naturally.
Like what?
Well, I mean, being generous with people, giving them space, letting them be who they are. But remember, our podcast is called Exploring Awareness. And I think we can look a little bit deeper into this idea of kindness, to see if it's something that we're like have to do, that we're trained to do, and it feels good to do. Or maybe it doesn't feel good to do if you actually are being kind and you don't want to. But what about if kindness was part of us already, that gets covered up by lots of other things? What if kindness was an innate quality that we have? Now, we've talked in this podcast a lot about this idea, this guide of becoming aware. And we always talk about, starting with becoming aware of the breath, becoming aware of the body, becoming aware of emotions, becoming aware of thoughts, and resting as awareness. And in that awareness place where we're simply letting everything be as it is, then there is a non-thinking sense of kind of peace, right? Just a peace, like, wow, I can just be aware of these things and not buy into them. There's a peace, or we've also used the word equanimity for that. We've used the word joy because it's like, how joyful it is not to be, burdened by all of these ideas and things that come at me all the time. And we've also used the word love, but there's another word for that called loving kindness. Loving kindness. And, in the Buddhist language, they use the word metta, M-E-T-T-A, metta, as a sense within us all of loving kindness. So see, that's coming not from the brain, not from training, not from social norms, but it's coming from a place that we access when we start exploring awareness. We've called that place our core. We've called that place our authentic self. We've even called that place, for people from a Christian tradition, like the Christ nature. Or from the Buddhist perspective, they might call it Buddha nature. Kind of an awake, alert place of awareness that's not affected by the daily chaos of life. And that's what I'm getting at with this felt sense of loving kindness that emanates from you, from your core, not from your brain.
So you're saying it's there already. It's there for us to tap into.
It is. It's there for us to tap into.
Really? Is it like joy? We say the joy is always there. We just cover it up. Is that the same thing for kindness?
Yeah, exactly. Because this, for lack of a better word, place or sense of connection, right? Which is a felt sense. Then as humans, we try to put words to it. And so there are all kinds of words we can use. And joy is one, and peace is one, and equanimity is one, and wisdom is one, and generosity is one, and loving kindness is one. So it's all different words used to describe that same place of inner core interconnectedness. Because it's not conditioned, we all have that within us.
So to me, that sounds ideal. I mean, it sounds heavenly. So what the heck happens that we become disconnected from all that?
Right. Well, because we start buying into all the things that we learn. We start buying into all the things that we're told. And, we are seeing examples of that now, people being told things, and it turns into a belief, and a belief that, is part of the neural activity of your brain, but may not represent, or it might be in conflict with these core values that we're talking about, that from my own personal experience exists within me already without having to being told or not.
Does that mean we're thinking things versus feeling them as we move through life?
Well, I think that there's a choice. Our culture and our upbringing and our kind of context seems to be based around thinking, doesn't it?
Yeah.
It's like we think, therefore we are.
Right.
And that's actually not true. We think, and therefore we are, would kind of reduce ourselves just to the neural activity of the brain. And a lot of people may think that's true. But because we're exploring awareness, we're becoming aware of the thoughts. And it's in the awareness of the thoughts that we become free of them. And so we transform these thoughts into awareness.
Okay, we have to go over that a second. In the awareness of the thoughts, we become free of them. Can we talk about that for a minute? What does that mean?
Well,
or what does that look like?
So I'm gonna use a word, and then I'm gonna pull back on it. If your brain is creating thoughts and stories and all kinds of negative feelings or fantasies or whatever, so your brain is doing that, right? A lot of people just do that. Now, here we're talking about knowing that you do that. And actually people say that a lot, right? They say, well, I know I was going off. Saying that I know is the part of you that says that is the awareness. Now, I think I've told this story before. Eckhart Tolle, who wrote The Power of Now, was experiencing a lot of depression. And he was really miserable, very miserable. And he had this thought in his brain that says, I just can't live with myself anymore. Well, now who said that? What said that? There was a sense of awareness. This I can't live with myself. He said, are there two of me? He tried to think it. And then, boom, he woke up to his sense of awareness. And he was freed of all of those thoughts that were making him miserable. It was like a transformation. The awareness, once he identified as awareness, all that stuff that was making him miserable was transformed into joy. And like he spent like 2 years in bliss, according to him.
I'm trying to picture what that looks like, or what, I mean, he identified as awareness and he lived in joy.
Yeah, because you can't think of it. It's a very, very experiential. Now, I've just come across this really great book by a person named Loch Kelly, and it's called The Way of Effortless Mindfulness. And, we've talked before about mindfulness as being something on your to-do list, something that you have to do. We've talked about, different ways people teach mindfulness. But I like this idea of effortless mindfulness, because actually what we're doing, we don't have to do anything except return to this place of awareness. And it seems like an effort, but if you look at it as effortless and just as your natural state, sometimes it makes it a little bit easier to access. And I just want to read a couple of quotes. It says, when we shift into effortless mindfulness, rather than trying to create a non-judgmental attitude, we discover that awake awareness is not just neutrally non-judgmental, but it is a naturally compassionate dimension of who we are. Should I read that again?
No, I'm just soaking it all up. I love that. Awake awareness. Why does that move me so much?
So see, it's not just awake awareness is not just neutrally non-judgmental. So and we've talked about that before, like just being aware of it is like, you're kind of dead. You're just kind of dulled. It's just like, well, I'm aware and that feels empty. You've mentioned that before, but no, it's a naturally compassionate dimension of who we are. And you see, if you can, move into that awareness space, it's such a compassionate act to do, because you're no longer bound up by all these thoughts. Some Buddhists call it delusions. To be free from your delusion, to be free of your thoughts, because you're this natural awareness that's already there. It is already free of those things, right? And so it actually doesn't take an effort to just relax in that place.
I love that. It doesn't take any effort to just relax in that place. And I hear that and I cherish that and I love that. But I'm just trying to think, when you get up in the morning and you got your kids and spouses and work and driving, can you maintain that in the reality of life?
Well, it is not instant, right? And it does take that practice of meditation. And if you do,
there you go. See, because I was going to say, you do pretty much maintain living in awareness, wouldn't you say?
Well, I don't want to give at one point I gave a percentage of time.
Right.
I'm in and out. And the more I practice, the more in it I am in. Right. So let's just say that.
Okay. But it'll go meditation, right? That's what helps us get
definitely. And most definitely there's the formal meditation practice and then the informal practice of maintaining that awareness. And we went over the last episode or a couple of episodes ago, the RAIN tool, so you can use that during the day. or use some of those 4 agreements to kind of keep you kind of in that mode as you go through the day. But it does take some time and practice and compassion and patience. And, you know, we're quite used to instant gratification, and that's also an expectation that we've learned, and we get impatient, we drop it. I would say that's not how this works.
Can I make a confession? This is how I want to live my life. This is how I try to live my life. This is the place that I connect to the joy and the equanimity and now the kindness, and but I feel like sometimes I'm alone in that. Where are my people? You know, where are the people who hear this and want to live this way as well? That is my biggest obstacle in life right now.
Well, we are in a pandemic, Lisa. And
yeah, well, it was before the pandemic.
So right now, this is our chance to cultivate it. And we're going to get out in the world. Now, I want to bring up another point. I mentioned it before. Mindfulness as a task. And Loch Kelly addresses that in this next quote that I think really is helpful to me. It says, deliberate mindfulness practice actively cultivates the attitude of loving kindness. So we've heard, loving kindness meditations, and you say, okay, I'm going to be loving, kind of a deliberate kind of intention that you're going to move through your day with loving kindness. You're going to just make sure you do that. But she says, whereas in effortless mindfulness, we discover a natural loving kindness that is already here. This discovery of natural loving kindness is the foundation of a new motivation for compassionate activity that is not based on external rules, but comes from the direct experience of interconnection with all of life.
That seems pretty complex.
Yes, and so this idea of the interconnection of all of life. Now, your brain can easily tell you that's not the case. But within, the awareness, and as we practice that and experience that, there also comes a realization that we're all interconnected through that place. And so then it's like what I say, how I treat you, and how I treat myself are the same. Now, it does mean we need to start with ourselves. Can we be loving and compassionate to ourselves? But sometimes we're more compassionate to other people than we are to ourselves. But I think the key here is that the natural loving kindness is already here. And then that's the foundation for a new motivation for compassionate activity. So it's kind of like the bottom up versus the top down. So what is your motivation for compassionate activity? So as we explore awareness, as we practice, as we use these mindfulness techniques, we connect to that within ourselves. We realize we're interconnected, and that becomes the motivation for loving kindness. And you walk up to someone, and at some point, there's no difference between the two, and so the motivation for loving kindness comes from that place as opposed to a set of rules or expectations.
I'm just going to let that linger for a minute, because that is an amazingly beautiful, powerful thought. I'm seeing myself walk up to someone, like you just said, and I just kind of disappear into them and they disappear into me. And if we're aware of that, there's your natural loving kindness, right?
Right, right. And so let's say you walk up to someone and you give them a hug, like a brief hug, just a hello hug, or you like hug them and you just share that moment of connection. There's different ways to give hugs. And I'll tell you, Burning Man, the hugs are great because, like I've said before, and I don't want to belabor this, but, out there's that already baked in the sense of, kind of generosity and being yourself. And there's just that sense of loving kindness. And you can get that in your churches as well. People have that sense of loving kindness that's coming from within. It's activated by their church services or whatever. So there's lots of different ways to do that. We're talking in this podcast about meditation, and it's not anyone of any religion can do it, but it's like connecting to that place that's there. Already there.
Yeah, you mentioned, I have a side note story that we're in a pandemic, and literally every move we make is a risk right now.
Yeah.
And
yes.
I went to Costco and there was someone I know there and I lost my head and I hugged her. It was the hug of interconnectedness though. And then I worried about it for 2 weeks, but it's been 2 weeks and and then I'm a member of a church and I have another huggy friend and we were outside, we had an outside service and she's like, we can do this. We have masks on. We won't, and we just hugged and it was like, sometimes you just have to do it, even in a pandemic. And so I hear what you're saying about those hugs of interconnectedness and how important they are. And like you said, there's different kinds of hugs, and to be able to share that is life affirming, enriching, and just helps build you up, I think.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it is important to share that with other people. But right now we're in a pandemic.
Yeah.
And you can also look at a squirrel and feel loving kindness. And you can look at politicians on the television and you can hear people saying things you may not agree with. But you can also connect to a sense of loving kindness for them and a sense of compassion for them.
So some people listening right now will go, well, why would I do that?
Right. And that would be because you're trying to make it deliberate.
What do you mean?
You can't do it. You have to connect to something that's already within. So if you connect to something within and you see someone on television who is just so caught up in a delusion, in the beliefs, that then a sense of compassion comes for them because of that situation that they're in. Because no matter what's coming out of their mouth, we're all still interconnected. A prisoner, a politician, a person you've had a bad breakup with. All of those different conditions doesn't change the fact that we're all interconnected. And so as much as it seems like it's impossible, and it is, if you're trying to make yourself do it. But if you connect to that ultimate truth of interconnectedness. Now, again, you don't have to believe this. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just expressing what I have experienced and many, many, many other people have experienced when they let go or practice and let these things drop off and wake up to the truth of your being. People can balk at it and say it's hard, but ultimately that's the truth. And we're all interconnected. And in that interconnection is, how joyful would that be if we all really realize that? How peaceful it would be. How much loving kindness it would be. How much generosity it would be. So your mind and your thoughts and your ego is going to fight it. That's what we practice. We become aware of all those things happening. Connect to that. We become aware of it. We see what's happening.
Well, there's my next needlepoint pillow project. Wake up to the truth of your being.
Yeah. Yes.
Now I just have to learn needlepoint, but you say these things, and I think, oh, I love that. That should be on a pillow or a poster or a T-shirt or something. Wake up to the truth of your being.
And I wish that for everybody. And it seems hard and it seems impossible. And I just want to encourage everyone to at least have a glimpse that could be possible. And then how? Well, how is you start becoming aware that you're breathing. And go from there. Then start back at episode 1 and get back to whatever this is, 34. And so we could do a guided meditation about that and help with some words, that can guide people to that sense. Yeah, you're ready to do that now?
I am ready.
Yeah, me too. So we shift now from the words and thoughts to now an intention of waking up from thoughts, which seems scary, seems paradoxical, but perhaps there can be a sliver of faith, or perhaps you've glimpsed it before. You know there's something more than just these thoughts in your head. So if you've experienced that before, let's move in that direction. You can settle into your chair or lay down or whatever. Okay, and let's calm our bodies down, calm our thoughts. And just check in with what's happening in the present moment. Which means whatever happened in the past, whatever you think is going to happen in the future, we're just going to put all that on hold. And if you'd like to pick it back up when we're done, feel free. And if you don't want to, you can leave it at the door. Go out the other door. So here we're now using this mindfulness of the present moment. And so what is happening in your body in the present moment? And one answer to that question is you are breathing. And I know you're breathing because you're alive and listening. And every one of the millions of people listening to this podcast right now is breathing. And everyone else who's not listening is breathing. And now you're watching your breath, mindful of your breath, you're aware of the breath. And I'd like you to try to see if you're aware that you are aware of your breath. And where do you land with that? Do you land in your thoughts, or do you land someplace, another layer of awareness? If it's not resonating, that's okay. Just be aware of the breath. And then do a quick body scan, starting at your feet. And moving up your ankles and your lower leg and upper leg and pelvis and abdomen and chest and your back and your hands and your arms and your shoulders. Just being aware of your body and moving awareness around your head, and awareness, a mindful awareness of your brain. And watch your brain working. And it's sometimes helpful to think of an aspect of yourself that's a watcher. Well, not separate, but sometimes it helps to think of the watcher or the witness of these things going on in your brain. Look down at your brain like a pot of stew and all the stuff there boiling and bubbling. And here you are watching from this place of stillness and quiet, and all that's happening, and the bubbles come and go, and just like thoughts come and go, emotions come and go. And this story is the story today, and tomorrow the story is going to change. Today you're told this, tomorrow you're told that. Now, from the place of awareness, it just can come and go, and awareness stays the same. And so that awareness isn't affected by anything. It's just neutral. But then what happens with that? What you've just done for yourself is very loving and compassionate waking up from all of that. And so now perhaps there's a feeling of like relief and of joy and of love and peace. It doesn't matter what the situation is. If you're doing that, and I'm doing that, Lisa's doing that, and the other listeners are doing that, there's a connection there to something larger. If you can feel like there's also an awareness of that awareness, then there's even a broader connection to the whole universe of just pure awareness. And that each of us then becomes a being expressing that awareness with our own individual histories and our own individual experiences, our own individual expressions in this field of energy, in the field of awareness. We're connected to something much bigger. And so in the waking up from this smallness, we have the opportunity to participate in vastness. And then we can use words like kindness and peace and joy and loving kindness to describe that. Experience and joy and relief. that then informs our interactions with each other. Instead of being dictated, it just comes naturally. And so if it's really your authenticity, your authentic self, then the joy and the love just comes from you. It connects to someone else's. It actually could evoke that from them. Help them wake up. That they'll feel it. It causes a resonance in them. You know, that fighting and arguing is not going to do it. In this world, hate has yet to dispel hate. Only love dispels hate. And so, this loving feeling, loving kindness, this interconnectedness is an opportunity for all of us. And it takes practice, intention, and faith. It takes compassion for yourself when you slip up. But only you slipped up in your mind, it's still there. You try again. Be on the path, not throwing stones at yourself or those that are. And so we'll end now with a couple of breaths. And then open your eyes and we'll wrap up.
I never want to speak after your meditations because I don't want to break the mood and the calm. We do have to end the episode so people can get on with their lives. I liked when you said practice, intention, and faith. Another pillow in the making. That's great. Practice, intention, and faith.
Yes.
Yes.
Right. And why not? You know?
Right.
Because otherwise there's not much to do except be miserable.
Right.
Or unconscious. And, you know, this is all an opportunity for us. And, you know, we've got this podcast going and we put it together and right during the pandemic. And, you know, it's a great opportunity for us to try something different as long as it makes sense and test it out and see if it makes sense, if it feels right. If it feels right, then keep practicing.
It reminds me of one of my new favorite Alan Watts quotes. Life is a miracle. Don't waste it. Alan Watts said that. I mean, he usually says a lot of pretty deep thoughts, but to me, that's it. I could scream that from the rooftop. Life is a miracle. Don't waste it. So why not practice and have intention and faith and live your life with infinite possibilities?
Right. And so there's the opportunity there.
Yeah.
And we really want to share the how to do that. And the how to do that, because it's easy to say, hard to do. And the how is by continuing to return to your core. And, one day, Lisa, we can talk about the brain and the mind.
Yeah, that's my new quest, trying to figure that out right now. The mind will blow your mind when you start exploring your mind.
But these practices also help your brain actually change to be compassionate and empathetic. Yeah. And so, there's that whatever is connecting us all really wants our brains to actually do these things as well. So we'll save that for another episode, but I just wish everyone the best, and I will encourage you to continue to practice and continue to explore the opportunities that we have for kind of a richer and fuller life, no matter what the situation.
And because we are connected, you can reach out anytime at our email address, which is exploringawareness@gmail.com. We've heard from some of you, always love getting your messages, your questions, your suggestions. We're connected. So reach out and send an old-fashioned email at exploringawareness@gmail.com.
Yeah, and please join us on the second Thursday of each month. Is when I'll be leading the open mindfulness meditation. But if you join the email list, and there's other meditations during the week and movement practices as well, and you would be welcome in that space. And maybe you'll see me in Alt Space as well. Alt Space VR, Evolve VR, and we can meditate there as well.
And we're on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. So, Frank, thank you so much for everything you bring to this conversation. I learn a lot, and I'm honored to be a part of it.
Well, thank you, Lisa, and your expertise and questions really make this accessible more to me and to everyone else as well. So, I think it's just a great thing.
And thank you for listening.
And remember, everybody, practice, intention, and faith. And I will connect with you. Goodbye, everybody.
This podcast is not an attempt to practice medicine or provide specific medical advice, nor does use of this information establish a physician-patient relationship. Listening to this podcast does not replace medical consultation with a qualified health or medical professional to meet the health and medical needs of you or others. If you are having problems, please see your primary care provider or your local mental health professional.